Chill here with Sirius Moon, Venus Hour, Venus Day. It's Venus Day. Venus is 22 and in Leo for this Venus Day, so it's a little bit of a lethal Venus. She's trining Lilith. Now, I actually wanted to talk about Mars. Look who is conjuncting Uranus in Gemini. What worst possible sign for Mars to conjunct Uranus in, I don't know, Scorpio, than in Gemini? You're saying, but surely Mars is in its home sign in Scorpio. Yeah, but and nothing is in its home sign with Uranus. It's the Scorpio Uranus generations understands what I'm talking about. Um, Now, Mars conjoins Uranus, trine in Pluto, and this is where Mars and Pluto are suddenly tested for their ability to provide an economic, sexual, political, and occultistic environment, trade environment that is allowing a Kundalini rise, meaning free from having no sexual violence, economic violence, spiritual warfare, even particularly the weapon trade industry. Uranus Mars cleanses everyone from any residues that they may have of being aggressive towards the victims of such things. Um, that's the meaning of the Uranus Mars cycle. Like a lot of people, oh, Uranus Mars, it can be violent, it can be this, it can be that. Well, no, it means in the hard aspects, it means even those who rebel have to allow Kundalini rise. Sexual boundary violation does not allow Kundalini rise, and this is where because Uranus goes beyond vice and virtue. It simply is about energy flow. Anything that negates that energy flow, meaning violence, is basically something that Uranus comes to liberate from. With Mars, it's sexual violence, financial violence, identity-based violence. For example, with this aspect, saying little hats as justification of is not suffice. Like people would actually have to go through the essence of the energy flow and not the external, superficial. Um, the agreement with Pluto. You know what? Let's take a look at the news today. I'm trying. The internet is slow. Of course, Mars Uranus can be, it can literally be slow internet or a power cut or something of that sort. Now, Mars is, of course, real estate. Mercury is still in the sign of the moon, so it's housing. It can be private equity because Mars is more towards like capitalism. Mars is the capital, the self ownership. Now, capitalism as the I am owning mine is not the problem. It's something that's not capitalistic and justifies these atrocities in the names of capitalism. That is the issue. Just like something that is socialistic or even communistic, which means the people, which means the conglomerate of individuals own the means of production. That's not an issue. It's when something is dishonoring human rights, women's rights, or the feminine rights under the guise of communism that we see the people. Like I said, nothing that is funded by an energy company is an underground. And then again, I'm not saying that people can't apply to big funding to make social changes. I'm just saying that they're gonna have to address the core issues within their funders as well. If they can do that, and you've seen my attempts to do that with the Rothschilds, with the Rockefellers. Okay. Also, because I believe we have the due diligence of informing what do we need to see change in the current system before we bring about another. Not that I know how to bring about another, um, but the calls to actions are very obvious. There are a lot of hearings regarding mkultra today. Definitely not suffice activity, not anywhere near suffice activity. And those are all the Epstein dossiers. So there is a lot of fear, a lot of challenges. Connection of the Manson. Like there are gonna be a lot of things that are going to become actually scientifically acknowledged by the jurisdiction. And again, the calling to declassify classified technologies is essential, particularly when we think about the International Court of Justice, war crimes. When I was saying it's not a beautiful hour of the separatists, it was not a political opinion, it was a pragmatic situation that was created, just like Israel put itself in a certain position, acknowledging the, I think it was the Armenian genocide. And then, of course, people are going to make the immediate comparisons. And the only way to tackle these things is to honor the feminine, to at the core tend to what was causing at the core to those atrocities and change it from the core. And that is not just women's rights, but children's rights, laborer rights, prisoners' rights. No forced hospitalization of people, no forced administry of anything. Very, that's the only thing that could remediate. There was a certain topic around the notion of, let's just say, litigation and the results of litigation that I was called to address, and I said, well, that pertains to, we can't have labor camps, imprison the homeless, and then put them to forced labor and expect a remediation for risk of imprisonment of those behind the orders. So the only thing that we must make sure is to honor the feminine and abolish torture and rape. By the way, according to Al Jazeera, Israel legislated a pro-torture, which is completely antithetical to what was told to high school students by 8200 along the years. I was one of the students that was studying in those schools. I was living with my mom and my grandmom. It was a public school. It wasn't a private boarding school, but they targeted us, and he knew I had to take French to dodge 8200. Anybody that took Arabic from our school, it was not even in the Manila. It was like um, and I actually knew a Persian teacher from 8200. She was very happy with her service, um, but there was also prisoner X that was killed, and that's an 8200. For me, it made me feel very uncomfortable because during university I was volunteering at what they call a developing neighborhood, which is an entire bogus. It's a neighborhood that was weakened by force because it was a strong neighborhood with a strong union between the neighborhoods, and then they made it into a crime neighborhood. Um, the previous mayor, not the current mayor, and and one of the things I did was connect between one of the residents who wouldn't get 8200s in the Manila to a person that was happy with their service for 8200s. And the cases like prisoner X make me feel absolutely uncomfortable, which is both a loss for people of societies that were by force weakened, competent, intelligent people that simply ended up with the wrong zip code that can happen to literally anybody at any neighborhood, and a point of interference that could get them to have a tech intelligence experience and get their intergenerational wealth boost. Now, we were, okay, no problem. We were targeted by the comparison to MI6 when I was in high school. I was in high school towards the 2000s. So we were targeted by the comparison to MI6, and we were told that that the Israeli intelligence came up with ways that get information without torture. Okay, that's how they would try to get us to join 8200s, particularly those of us that were taking French. I did not join 8200, um, but um, I was also during to my kind of um, suicide ideation at that time. It's not something I deal with today. Today I consider suicide a societal murder. Yeah, I was also not recruited, therefore. Ken, um, yeah, כן, לקחת. אוקיי. ניקח תה אז. So, הרגע רצה. Okay. זה... There's gonna be... תהיה הלוויה לחמיני היום. אני יודעת, נו, אז מה, אחרי שנה. That's not the issue. מה זה דצנטריש? זה... אני מחפש תגמלים. Okay. Now, the fact that there is... First of all, the fact that we need to hear it from Al Jazeera, but secondly, the fact that there is even that possibility is an impediment on intelligence forces, is a treason, is an act of treason in young students that join 8200, which is an elite unit. It's supposed to be their tech and intelligence experience for life, and a lot of people serve there for life. It's basically an act of treason in the forces of the intelligence that are against Epstein-like infiltration. And that puts to questions those jurisdiction forces. And then I'm going to have my coffee today when I have a funeral to Khamenei. Yeah. את רוצה כמה שקלים להביא חלב? Of course. תקחי לך משהו לאכול גם. Okay. Oh no. A man was setting himself on fire to liberate Tibet. Oh my God. Yeah. Wanted China out of Tibet. Okay. הסופר כבר פתוח? הסופר לא יודעת, 6:50 לא. טוב, אז בואי תקחי לך לחלה. אוקיי. פה יש יותר מחלה. Thank you. מה שאני אגיד לך שזה, הפסטרמה הזה היה עכשיו כנראה מבצע, זה היה 27. מאמי, תודה. כן, זה היה מבצע, נכון. חשבתי אולי כאילו לפני שזה Lakers. I'm going out right now, which means I won't make it there. I mean, my... No. Right. So this is... Person sets himself on fire to liberate. Yes, this is an act, basically Uranian act. Uranus also is involved with what people call unaliving oneself. This can absolutely be a nervous system mind hack, by the way. And this is again where the classified technology is essential when I talk about international courts and any type of courts, but also, as we see here today, President of Venezuela, almost 3,000 killed in Venezuela. But this is kind of like the aftermath. It's not something that happened today. Almost all the ministers of La Guardia country, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, were killed. So 4,000 people of the government were deployed as emergency. So here we see something that could be susceptible to doctrine of trauma or trauma doctrine in politics. Now, as an astrologer, it is a time where there can be absolutely natural disaster. And at the same time, the trauma doctrines sit pretty well on natural disasters, which is declarations of emergencies and confiscations of human rights. which is why people need to really, the people, the culture, the civil society needs to remove all residues of um, violence, abuse, and so on. Okay, it's very easy to take over a region where the people are violent to each other, which is why there are always attempts to create violence between people prior to invasion. The intelligence missed 102 reports regarding the assassination attempt towards Trump in 2024. Again, something missing. Neptune and something missing. Neptune has intelligence and it's something missing. Seeing that there were missing reports, we're probably going to see that there were missing names. Crocs flew a drone above the area hours before committing the shooting. The system against Secret Services drones was not. Okay, the system of the Secret Services against drones was not active. Again, this is something that the event happened 2 years ago, but the report is coming out now, and the report is relevant for the conjunction. So I think Uranus was on the midheaven of Trump around Beta Persei back then. And again, whenever there is training of the intelligence where there is torture or where there is stuff like that, then the intelligence becomes incompetent. That's what happened to Israel, and that's what happened in that case to United States with the assassination in Trump. We see that with the hearings against the mkultra, and that is the direct result of such projects. Okay, that's the result of such projects. That's what comes up when. It's not for nothing that when I was in high school, they would try to target the young high school students to the elite units that are intelligence elite units by comparing to MI6 and saying, oh, we offered our methods to MI6, it's the British intelligence services, they didn't want it, they were good with torture, and then, you know, and here is the thing. Israeli army is a mandatory army service. Somebody enters 8200, they enter for 3 years. They usually are going to have miluim. They're usually going to have time where they have to go back to the army. They don't know if the heads of intelligence are going to be the same heads during the time where they have a mandatory army service. It's a complete fail. It's a systemic fail of any intelligence that respects itself. The right to resign if something along the chain of commands is given an illegal order. It's the must to resign. There's a lot of litigations towards the Israeli intelligence against sexual boundary violation. Like I said, I opened this episode saying that the economic, trade, fiscal system, science system, and even weapon trade system, and in that case intelligence as well with the sextile to Neptune, will have to show that it can provide a zero rape, zero torture, zero abuse environment, because nothing can defend if it can't do that. Um, Again, this is approaching the on the degree B6 style that is going to be our reality check to Gladio. Okay, I talked about the thought that, oh, crime organizations, we can use them to defend the city. Not terrible thinking, not something that didn't work, but it had caveats, and we're dealing with those caveats today. And that's probably going to be leading us all the way to the 2060s, where we're going to have another Saturn-Neptune conjunction, this time no longer in a sextile of Neptune and Pluto, no longer in a Gladio setting. If that means that the lawless have to honor human rights and women rights and women rights and women rights. Trafficking against women rights. Better than the plutocracy. And the plutocracy has to compete on that topic towards the 2060s. I cannot stress that enough. It's a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Gemini, in the middle decan Gemini. It does its back and forth. It's going to affect trade. It's going to affect cities. It's going to affect technology. It's going to affect children. It's going to affect labor. It's going to affect business. Now we had the precipice, the Saturn-Neptune, and indeed Neptune is stationing, I think, to go retrograde. The Saturn-Neptune on degree 1. Neptune is going to strike that point again. It can be leaking of names. It can be leaking of information. It can be seeing the missing, okay, the 102 missing radio reports. So I said with Neptune in sign of Mars, the missing might be the evidence. Trump is satisfied with Iran agreeing to what United States needs. There's a bombing in Damascus. 9 people dead, 20 wounded. In a cafe at the central city. About a kilogram of bombing, and had metal in it. Unfortunately, that's a predicted Mars-Uranus event. United States rejects the authority of the International Court in Hague. That's meaningful. That's meaningful. The United States will not cooperate with any investigation of the Hague against Trump regime, and the United States calls to cancel the sanctions on United States. This is quite a sensitive background for the Ankara meeting of the Allied forces, with the United States investing 100 times more than the separate. But here is the thing: is it correct to count United States investment against the separate states of NATO? or against NATO itself, which I think against NATO itself is coming close to the 90 to the same level of investment. And I think a lot of people are going to say that in Europe this summit as well. Um, when it comes to the United States not wanting to be litigated, again, we had such issues before the Rolodex. Before the Rolodex, Neptune is going to conjoin Ketu of Michel Nihul. Um, Not simple times, and with the position of Turkey, is not something that is easy for the separatists, or it is making it difficult for a separatist. And yet, I am pretty convinced that in The Hague there probably still are separatists, which can prompt a Rolodex leak. Um, the bigger picture is that it will probably provide certain type of transparency that the Epstein files even weren't managing to permeate these layers. Okay, again, that there's a big issue, and again, if we date back to the true dossiers, the troop operated in public housing. Okay, probably not only in public housing, but he was basically operating in public housing. Unfortunately, it was more possible to make less accessibility to public housing around Europe since, but it's not like the housing sector was improved in any way. Again, those things came um, before let's say the current governments and the previous governments in Europe, most of them, and but the fact that the trajectory was continued is something that a lot of Europeans are not satisfied with, um, and yet we would need to resolve the conundrum that the things were done in public housing. I think we had several cases in the Netherlands that were kind of like the true um, in recent years, and I think it's pretty obvious what would be the United States action. My prediction is upon the Neptune retrograde arriving to degree 1, particularly if there's a call for sanctions on the United States, then now this is something that calls for something that is calling to hold accountable something is more global. By what authorities, I don't know. Um, but it's imperative for many things. I will not go into detail around that. Missing persons seen yesterday. Let's do a little bit of a tending to the missing. This is horary with Neptune. Again, the only way to antidote the coming events would be honoring the feminine. Any action against that is going to backfire so massively, with Uranus making its way to Aldebaran, that I cannot even begin to stress. Just think about it. Good people that are good because they take advantage of the access to choice that they do have, and we want to maintain that access to choice. Yeah, like you don't want to take the access to choice for a person that has the competence and the bravery to go against or to speak against certain layers and echelons of corruption. Yeah, you don't want to you don't want to take their you don't want to take their access to choice to express their honest opinion and divert their courage and competence in the right direction. Let's just say. Um, Mercury retrograde ruling this retrograde at 25 degrees Cancer. Okay, the missing. We see the missing here in the 10th house. We see it as a Mercury hour, Mercury retrograde. Mercury in the first house, ascendant 28 degrees Cancer, Moon in the 8th house. Can have to do with somebody that delved into the occult, somebody that delved into something of a divinatory, something to do with the career of the missing person. Mars Uranus, we may find details. Neptune can also be crime, so it can be drug related or crime related. Mercury retrograde, meaning that it's regarding a conversation that has already happened when Mercury was direct here. And it could have been regarding esoteric, occult, even astrology. Um, in the background, again, making sure that no sexual boundary violations is going to assist finding the missing, creating place for the missing. And Neptune is also the people that are hospitalized, whether mentally or not, or under surgery. The rights of these people. Okay, anything that was violated there is creating, let's just say, not so good situation for the violators. Particularly with Neptune. Neptune has its own mysterious waves. And Venus 22 degrees Leo. Now there's a lot of oddities with this thinning of the veil. And it basically, I said it, that something is going to test the ability of the environment to provide a free violation, free environment, no matter what. For example, a person might have a rent against site. And then it doesn't matter what the person is wearing, they would have and the person that has a rent against site has to ask themselves, were they saying that people should wear something or that people should dress in a certain way to prevent things? Then they might be gifted a rent against site, and then they won't be able to complain, have to deal with their own internal patterns. Okay, they won't be able to blame it on the other. Um, any sort of unsolicited, invasive, either technology, intelligence, as we see, is kind of like the implications begin to show up. It's like either it's being held accountable, or we have missing reports in the assassination attempts of a president, or young people don't want to recruit to certain units where they see they're not covered when they need to disobey legal order, for example. Okay, I'm a civilian. I did not recruit to any of those things. And the reason is because I'm against that policies of violence, which I think is more than clear. Okay, power doctrines that are power over and are compatible with life, and they cannot effectively defend anything. The only thing that works is basically to abolish rape and to abolish these practices within and outside, and that's the only thing that can create any national or international defense. Again, I cannot stress that one enough. World news, do we have anything on the world news? United States was afraid that Israel will assassinate Arakchi and Kalibaf during the negotiations with Iran. Didn't happen. Um, yeah, there's something. I will save the embarrassment to the people. It's a local issue, but it's like people saying that catching smuggled weapon is not leading to decreasing violence. And of course, it's not suffice. Um, but it kind of looks like weapon trade. I know. That's pretty much the local news. The world news. And here is the thing. The people that thought it's funny to harass, to violate, to harm people, they're getting a ketu on their magha. Meaning what they wanted to gain from that, they're getting a ketu, they get a dematerialization on. It's a fated cycle. And that's a cultural thing. It's not a culture. Ketu Leo is not, we're in Ketu Maga preparing for Ketu Leo. This is not a time that honors bravado. This is not a time that honors um, It's the reality. It's the important reality check for Magha. And Israel is going to absorb that on Israel's Mars, so we're going to see a lot of reality check to Israel. Long awaited by Israelis. Let there be no mistake about that. The um, the intoxication with illusions of power is not yielding national or international security, is not yielding an economy that economies, and it disconnects people from their sense of patriotism. You can't be patriotic about people that ideate violence against women, for example. And then those people that ideate, they can't identify themselves as patriotic. They can't identify themselves as either underground or defenders of anything. And that's how we lost in the aftermath of 67. We can't keep the land violating women. Now, all those fear tactics, power control tactics, is not compatible for running a civilian-based anything. Definitely not a country. Definitely not a global village. Now, if you think about it, what's a good trajectory for, let's say, somebody was a rascal or a bully and gets a position of power? The good trajectory is that they start making sense, is that they start being reasonable, they start abolishing violations on a consistent level. That would make sense that they were criminal when they were disincluded, and when they're given a position of power, not power over, power with, then they honor that. They honor themselves by abolishing not just crime, but the structure that creates crime. And Ketu Maga is going to require for people to show, it's like, hey, you were disincluded back then. You can't say you're not the black swan when you're running the deep state, let's say. And the people that went on a more, let's just say that every single access to choice that they did have, that they were aware of, they used to expose the mechanism that creates crime or crimes against humanity, to tackle it at that point of intervention. Those people might be the ones that get their perceptions to yield. It was not about dehumanization, and it was also not about allowing the power-drunk people to get everybody else drunk as well. Okay? It's addressing the violence that created power drunkenness at its core. Now, with Venus 22 in Leo, Saturn in Aries, the visible might not be, how should I say it, just like I talk about nervous system hacking. Note that the advice for looters that I had in the previous a lot of people that were trying to have power over a situation or over people's relation, or whether they're single or not, or with who they are, particularly if they try to preserve, it's like trying to preserve it's like saying that the people behind mkultra were were successfully competent in protecting national and international security. Okay, it's that level of bogus to try to use concepts that are misogynic and dishonoring of the feminine to begin with, whether it's names, whether it's concepts. Energy manipulation. Okay, all of that is backfiring at the core level. And then the people that climbed on that much of a high tree that they don't know how to come down from that tree, they have the worst time at this time. Whereas the people that stood for sovereignty, that stood for honoring the feminine, they see the trajectories showing themselves. Because again, the idea of extortion and extortion cults is to create a bubble of smugness around violation of human rights. That's their point, is to get somebody else to do the crimes against humanity and then blame them. And they use nervous system hacking, they use a lot of things. The shooter is never the one committing the shooting. And yes, we should also take that into consideration in sexual violence cases. Absolutely agree with that. Again, without talking about the mechanism that generates offenders and dismantling that mechanism, we don't actually have any venue of rehabilitation for offenders or for their victims. Happy Venus Day. Gonna have my coffee.